Hi, I'm Nir Hindi, the founder of the Artian, a company that applies an art mindset in business environment to drive innovation and originality. Today, I'm going to speak with you about how art drives innovation and why we need Renaissance mindset, why and what leaders can learn from TikTok, and why artists and entrepreneurs are twins.
Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Nir Hindi. He is the founder of the Artian. It is a trans-disciplinary training company that fuses and mixes art in business and technology and environments to pursue originality. And talking of that, I mean, we've talked about these biases in part 1. We talked about the biases and who the great artists are and how we don't recognize great artists in business and how we don't recognize great business in great art and how those two things come together. And that's where we're going to go into this in part 2, is how art is at the foundation of innovation. And that is what Nir has been exploring and bringing together in entrepreneurship in the work that he's doing. So let's dive in from there, Nir. Why don't you lead the way?
Yeah. Thank you, Dov. I don't know, your energy is so contagious. And even though it's like 10 o'clock at night here in Madrid, I mean, I feel I just started the day. So thank you for bringing this energy.
Thank you.
Maybe I will continue to work after our conversation. I think if I'll go back, Dov, to some of the things I think about art, I want to say something to our listeners. I want you to understand, art is not about beauty. Art is about originality. In art, it's almost impossible to succeed if you copy others. So the role of the artist is always to innovate. And that's, I think, the biggest also in part 1, I talked about the first lesson. Now I want to speak about the second lesson that I learned about artists and business professionals, is that what we want to do in business. Often in business, we are looking to become better, more productive, more efficient. In order to do it, what we need to do, though, we need to look to the past, ask ourselves, wait, what worked for us? And then improve it. So basically, business need to look to the past and improve it. Artists cannot work that way. No. If they will look to the past and copy the others, they won't consider original. Maybe they will look to the past to learn from it, but they won't copy it. Right. So artists need to look to the future and create it. And that's why I think we can learn a lot from each other. The business world is trained to execute. Artists are trained to create. While the business world is trained to master, okay, the artists are trained to explore. And innovation often requires those skills that we are not trained. And for me, art is influential in the business world in 2 ways: mindset and skills. So when you think about innovation, think about what artists are doing. Think about for a moment about the mainstream. What is the power of the mainstream? The power of the mainstream is the routine, the way we do things, the way things are. But the artists don't work in the mainstream. They challenge the mainstream. Why we do what we do, why the things are the way they are. And in order to do it, they normally work opposite from society. Society work top bottom. The society to the individuals, the bosses to the employees, but artists always work bottom up. And the moment it succeeds, it becomes the new mainstream. And that's exactly what we need in organization when it comes to innovation. You need innovators that challenge the way we do things in the organization. You need them to create the organization of the future working bottom up, not dictating the top bottom. So that's just one example. I mean, how we even need to think how we think in the business world and what the way artists think and what we can learn from them. And we can speak about a lot of examples, including innovation technology that came from artistic practices. So,
again, in my work, we talk a lot about how the old school of leadership is failing miserably, and it was dictatorial, it was top down, and now we need to at least flatten things, at least. But I love this idea that you're putting forward, that is that artists, so again, this is the thing that's got us sort of jammed in a corner, is that artists are seen as outside, but they are challenging mainstream in order, they can't do, you have to step away in order to observe. And observation is such a key point of being a great leader, a great, and as we can get into the distinction of seeing versus observing, but artists have to observe, and oftentimes great leaders are observant. Like how many civil rights leaders were there before Martin Luther King? Many, but he observed something that was a seed of greatness in that entire movement that others had not seen. It's that it's the observing something that is oftentimes overlooked. And I had a conversation with my friend Jamie Mustard, who is the author of The Iconist, yesterday, and we talked about how one of the things I loved about his book is, as I read it, I kept saying, "Of course." That was my part of my endorsement that I wrote, which was, "Of course." Everything is "of course," and it's when somebody observes something that should be obvious, but we're ignoring. And artists seem to do that. Bringing that into the business space is what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
Distinction between seeing versus observing in the context of innovation.
Excellent question. So, when in part one, you asked me what led me to do what I do. Yes. I didn't study art. I'm not an artist. But when I started to research, I want to understand where art is relevant. And obviously, innovation was the first space, but I asked myself, what is it about art that's relevant to innovation? And you started to speak about observation. And as it's such a good observation of observation, Dov. And as I mentioned, art is very relevant in mindset and skills. And think about what we need to do normally in the innovation process. We are being told to go outside, observe our clients, observe how they behave. And from this observation process, we are supposed to come up with the insights. The thing is that, ask yourself, are we being trained to observe? Most likely not. No. We don't have observation classes in school. The job environment doesn't allow us to develop it. Yes, bosses tell their team, go and observe, but do you create the condition for them to actually practice? And here, art is very relevant. Why? Because visual art, and especially the art before the era of photography, especially, art is a visual language. Before you even use your eyes, before you even start to use words, you need to use your eyes. And you cannot just look at it for 20 seconds. You need to take the time and observe. And ask yourself a question. First of all, objectively, what do I see in front of me? I see 3 men and 2 women. I see a horse, I see a castle, I see a house. Then you need to ask yourself, what's happening over here? Who are those people? Oh, I think this is a queen and this is a king, etc. And then ask yourself, what is the relationship between them? Now, this process by itself will help you to become better observant when it's come to innovation. And today at Yale Medical School and Nursing School, many of the medical team is required to take those lessons in the Yale Museum, because they found out that if you engage with art, you will have 30% better observation skills. You will have 20% more insights to what's going on in the situation. And you will have 56 more better ideas, if I remember correctly the number, 56 better ideas for what to do about it. And that's exactly what we need in innovation. Sometimes, in my workshop, you ask me about the Artian in the past. And what I do is that I come to organization and not only that I provoke the way they think about innovation and show what artists can do, is that I put them in front of artworks and ask them, what do you see? And then I put them in front of business situation and ask them, what do you see? And I have a classic exercise that I do until today. More than 1,000 people saw this exercise, and it's an exercise that led the company to a product that generated more than $200 million a year. Only 2 people managed to see the insight. And then I look at the business world and tell them, you are the innovator that have $200 million in front of you and nobody sees it.
Fascinating. The thing you talked about there that I think we've got to sort of go a bit deeper in is, as you said, leaders will often tell somebody, go and observe, right? And that's kind of language inside of the business world. But as you said, they don't facilitate an environment for observation.
Exactly.
What you just gave us was observe this art and then observe this situation and looking for that. I want to give a practicality here. So a leader's listening, they're going, okay, I get this, but I don't get it. I get it intellectually, but I don't get it in a practicality way. How do I take this and become, like, what can I do to facilitate better observation inside of my organization, not only for the purposes of innovation, but maybe for the purposes of efficiency, for the purposes of a million other things, or even human beings, if it's HR. So can you give us some practicality around learning how to observe?
Yeah, I can definitely do it. I mean, I give few things, since my work is to work with art, I want to encourage people to actually open, for that matter, a Google Art project and choose a painting from the 18th century and 17th century. One morning, once a week for 20 minutes. Take a notebook and just write objectively, what do you see? And then ask yourself, what do I see? And then make connections. And I know many of the business leaders, they will tell me, Nir, we are busy. We don't have 15 minutes to look at a painting. But observation is a skill that need to develop, hone, and practice. And if you don't give the time for yourself, it won't happen. And for other people that, the one that maybe using their phone every time they enter to a place and waiting, or using in the airport, leave the phone for 15 minutes and then just look at the people around you. What do you notice? Who are they? If you needed to build them a story. The thing is, Dov, is that what I say now sounds very obvious, and most of the people won't do it because it sounds stupid. Why do I need to look it out? I'm managing 1,000 people company. What does this guy tell me about art? But if observation, and with this comes empathy, with this comes seeing from different perspective, with this comes listening, because one of the things that you will notice is that if you and me will look at the same situation, you might see A, I might see B. And you know what? Especially in art, we both may be right. So one exercise is just, view art and start to write down what those things that you see. And if you want to improve your ability to perceive details, because often when you go into a situation with clients, they will do something super quick. This is actually a simple game from the Boy Scout. It's called Kim's game. You take 25 different items, you cover them, and then reveal them for a few seconds, 20, 30 seconds, and then you cover them again. And then you need to write down what are the items. On average, every person will remember anywhere between 12 to 14 different objects. But if you have 25 and you start to practice the ability to perceive those different items, you improve your eyes to actually pay attention to those small details. But yet again, sometimes it's what I say sounds like a games, but they are proven games.
Well, they are games, but they're games that actually improve the mind and improve the thinking and improve creativity. Exactly. One of the things that I do with leaders in order to help them with creativity and innovation is we play a game called Make Shit Up. Right? That's what we call it, make shit up, because that basically is what you're doing. And so I say, okay, and I'll take a leader out and I say, okay, let's go for coffee. And they go, I'm paying you all this money to go for coffee. Yeah, we're going to go. Don't worry, I'll buy it. We'll go for coffee. When we go for coffee, pre-pandemic days, we go for coffee and we sit there and I go, I want you to just pick two people who are having coffee together. My wife and I used to do this when we first met. And they go, yeah. And I say, I want you to make shit up. And they go, what do you mean? I want you to make up a story about these people.
Yeah.
And they go, what do you mean? And so I go, and so it's a male and a female. They go, oh, they're a couple. And I go, how did they meet? I don't know. Make shit up.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, well, and what was that first date like? And I take them on this adventure of exploring their creativity because, again, the biases is I can't be an artist because I don't paint. And many of my clients are incredible artists who've never painted because it's got nothing to do with painting. Painting is just a expression, but it's the engagement of creativity inside of the mind that you're talking about, this mindset, and then exploring that so that now when you look at the problem, as you said, you can now make shit up and go, well, what if this? Because oftentimes things are solved by people, again, who go, it's this and this. And they go, of course, why didn't I see it? But they're willing to make shit up. And we are so fearful of getting things wrong that I think that's the number one block to our creativity, the fear of getting it wrong. If I paint it, it will look bad. I can't do Matchstick Men, so I won't paint. I can't sing, so I won't write songs. I can't solve the problems, so I'm not going to try. Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you're touching a very kind of a crucial point when what again we can learn from artists. And I think there is also a leadership lesson over here. I mean, the ability to move, from, I don't want to call it a failure, but to move from one project to another, even though it didn't succeed, but to try and, keep trying. And in regard to what you said about creativity and making things up or making shit up, for me, before this, even creativity, if I can add, it's imagination. Yes. And, Dov, for me, I feel that many or the majority of what we really need in terms of technology and solution in the world already exist. What we are really lacking is imagination. And if it's okay with you, I want to read one quote by an artist that I really love, Marina Abramovic. And she said, we can't invent anything in this world which is not there already. It's about seeing in a different way. Anything that is revolutionary is in front of your nose and it is never complicated. So I think, it's not to say that there are not more things we need to tackle, but it's to say that often we are lacking the imagination of what is possible in this world.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the reapplication, isn't it? It's not like we see things in this and we go, well, this is the only way to apply this, but it's not. Tell us the story. You and I talked about this before, and I really love this. I love for our listeners to know about this. Tell us the story of Google Street View.
Okay. So one of the things that surprised me is that I wanted to understand how artists influence technology. Now, again, another kind of stereotype, people think about artists as a painter, someone that put canvas, color on a canvas. But artists work with whatever is available for them. So in 1978, an artist called Michael Niemark and a group of researchers in MIT Media Lab did a project. And Michael Niemark is an artist that's interested in place representation. And one of the projects he wanted to do is to actually create kind of experience for people to travel to places they've never been without leaving their living room. Okay. So in 1978, he goes in the street of Aspen, Colorado, and basically mapped the whole streets. And he built kind of a digital software on analogical hardware, which was kind of a TV that you click and you move in the city. Now, the way he did it was amazing for me because he took his Jeep, he installed 3 video cameras at the top, he used bicycle to measure the distance, and this is how he created the Aspen movie map. And that was like 30 or 40 years before Google Street View. And Michael Niemark has a 16, if I remember correctly, patent on his name. He is a pioneer in place representation, virtual reality, etc. And when I show people this example, they cannot even believe that an artist thought about it before we even had personal computer, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I love about that is that, you know, this is something that is every day for us now. We take for granted. And I think that, you know, I've had many wonderful conversations on my shows with technological people doing amazing things, mind-blowing things. And often they'll say, but it came from this. And this is something that we, you know, didn't really even think about. It was right there, as you said, the artist you quoted said, it's right in front of us. But it's, you know, we don't see it. And I think that oftentimes we leave the artist out of the equation. We forget the artist is the innovator. We forget that is the work of an artist is, as you said, is creativity, not copy, not, you know, looking in history and going, oh, I'll do what they did. But actually, how can I take this and that and bring something new together? You don't have to like every piece of art you see, because some of it's not about liking. Oftentimes, I've often said, I believe this with all of my heart. One of my favorite artists are comedians, and they're artists because of their irreverence, their willingness to confront what is the norm and tear it apart and reveal what is underneath. If we look at the brilliant American comedian who died, unfortunately, very young, Bill Hicks, he was a brilliant political, spiritual comedian who, you know, saw things that were glaring that made people sort of shocked and laugh at the same time. And that is what a great artist does. It kind of awakens you to something that is right in front of your eyes. And that's what you're sort of putting forward here for us to really grasp about, you know, when you and I talked about in your show that in my ideal board of advisors, you know, if you've got a board of advisors, you know, you've got the person who is a member of this committee and that committee and does this and does that. Where's the artist?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think, first of all, the World Economic Forum actually appointed Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist, a few years back as part of the board member. So here is already kind of another example for companies or organizations that understand it. And I'm totally with you. I think that what artists bringing into the table is the ability to unlock human potential and imagination. And we talked about it that's, by the way, you know, one of the things that I try to do in my podcast, to actually invite artists that I find fascinating in what they do, and allow people to actually listen to this way of thinking. And we discussed, both of us, about Amanda Gorman. And I think that it's remarkable that a 22 years old poet managed to capture the heart of millions. And business people and political people cannot give us a vision that she could. And she united people with her words. That's how powerful art can be when you think about leadership. Because for me, art and leadership, it's not about the past, it's about the future. And there is no one recipe to go to the future. You need to be explorer. You need to be someone that believes. You need to have the passion. You need to have the trust. You need to have the ability to be resilient. All of those things coming from art, because art is not a 10 years game or a 10 years profession. It's a lifelong profession, which is exactly like leadership. Leadership is not something that ends. It's always about the next thing. Where can I go next?
Yeah, I think you're very, that's so on point. When you look at your life, as we're coming towards the end of this part of this show too, as you look at your life, and you talked about this feeling like you were torn and you had to be one or the other, what was the point when you realized that you may have been in your own way? Because I think that every one of us has to be honest about that with ourselves if we're going to really move forward and say, here's what I did that really was blocking me from fully stepping into all of who I am. Because now you're leading and inspiring others with the work you're doing, and you're helping other leaders to also lead and inspire. So what was the point for you? Is there a key point or key points that made you go, I'm in my way, I got to get out of my way?
Listen, I think growing up in Israel, in a way, it's a country that encourage you to kind of be different in a way. Everyone want to do their own thing. So I always felt that I need to do my own thing in a way. But I think that, doing what I do is not an easy job. To try to connect those worlds that for so many years were separated, it's a difficult task. But I think that when, I always ask myself, basically every day I have this question, am I on the right path? Do I do what I need to do? And then you meet people, and you meet a young 19 years old in Mexico, and he tell you, until I heard you, I thought I was doomed. And then you get a message from someone that tell you, Nir, your podcast give me hope. And then you meet another person that tell you, Nir, I've read all the academics around this art and business thing, but what you are doing is like so inspiring and so successful in its way. So then you feel that you are on your way. It's like, I think that as an artist or an entrepreneur, I don't know, it's like you always has this doubt, the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe what I say, it's not real, but it's those people that respond to that and tell you, you are the one that helped me to take it to the next step. So, it's like kind of pay it forward. Someone gave me, I gave to someone, and they will give to someone else. At least that's what I hope.
Yeah, I think that as you and I talked about when I was on your show, that art, there's many things people can say about what art is, and all of them are right in their own way. But I think that in many ways, art is about catalysm. It catalyzes something. And what it catalyzes in one person is not necessarily what it catalyzes in another. And the challenge with that is when you're in the process of creating, you may not know what you're actually catalyzing. And I actually encourage people to embrace that. You don't know what you're catalyzing. Just be willing to catalyze. So, I had an artist I was working with who was an actor many years ago, and he said he was thinking about quitting acting. And I said, why? And he goes, it's such a frivolous thing. It's all egos. And I said, you're absolutely right. It's totally frivolous. It's so much ego. So why not do it from a different place? Why not do it from a place of depth? Why not do it from a point of meaning? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, listen, I think Robin Williams is hysterically funny. This is back in the day when Robin was still around. And I said, but I don't know an actor who's hit me harder emotionally, who's catalyzed me to look at mental health, who's catalyzed me to look at life after death in the roles he's played and the way he's played them. He's made me look at things that catalyze something. And I think that if we are willing to, we talk a lot about being inspiring leaders and being innovative leaders and being leaders who make a difference, but it's in the art. And I love that you're saying that, screaming it from the rooftops and making us all pay attention. I really do. I think it's so important.
Thank you, Dov, for giving me the opportunity to shout out it in your show. I mean, I think it's very important, especially for your audience, with the impact that you create. I mean, I think that, at the end, I think that it is those. I always say that, everyone look at Apple and they want to be Apple without understanding the sacrifices and the vision that was there and hopefully is still there. That understanding that art, humanities are going hand in hand with technology and business. They are not separated. They are one.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Nir, this has been a pleasure and an honor, sir. It is always a pleasure and honor to have any conversation with you, and I'm sincerely grateful for that. Thank you so much for all that you do and for all that you've shared here on the show. Again, I want to make sure that everybody knows where they can find out more about you, about your resources, about the podcast, all of those things. Please let our guests know.
So you can see our web, www.theartian.com. You can find our podcast, the Artian Podcast, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. Or just feel free to drop me an email at nir@theartian.com.
Again, thank you so much, Nir. Again, that's the Artian, THE, the art, ART, IAN, Artian, like Martian, only Artian. Okay, exactly. The Artian. And like I said, the podcast is phenomenal. Very select guests. Like I said, I was honored to be on there. And these are people who are really thinking in an extraordinary way. I encourage you to go there. As I said, we'll make sure that all those links are posted in the show notes. And for you, dear listener, remember you can hang out with other conscious leaders. You can chat about this episode that you've been listening to or any past episodes in our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter how successful you are. If your employees and your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your true capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or leadership strategist for yourself or your organization, simply go to dovbaron.com. Because unified, actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about the intersection of art and business and how you may be turning a blind eye to the very thing that could transform and innovate your organization. What you need may be right under your nose. Create a space where it's safe for people to create. Reward that creativity, even if you don't approve of it. Recognize it, value it, because it is the catalyst to everything that you need in your business and in your leadership. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.